All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about arrays and associative arrays. And so I have taken my index.php file and I've stripped it down to just be this. Right now, if I refresh, I can see it just says arrays at the very top. An array is another data type. What an array is, it's a list of objects that are all in one bundle. And that's going to make more sense when we see one. For example, if I want to create an array of colors, what I would do is I could define the variable colors, and then I would put an opening bracket, a closing bracket, and a semicolon to finish off that line. But inside this opening bracket and this closing bracket, I can put my array of colors. And so for example, maybe I have these three colors, red, green, and blue. That's one way of creating an array of colors. If we break this down right now, I have this variable called colors. I've created an array, which is enclosed by the brackets. Inside, I have a comma separated list of string values. It just happens that these three string values are colors. So I got red, green, and blue. I could have maybe an array of numbers. And so here, let's take what it says. So I have a variable called numbers. I have an opening bracket to define the array and a closing bracket to end it. And then I have a comma separated list of numbers. In this case, they happen to be integers, but they don't have to be integers. They could be, maybe it's an array of speeds or something like that, where maybe it's not an integer. Maybe it's 45.3 and then it's 54.2 and 29.7. So it can be an array of speeds. That's the variable. I opened it up, I closed it, and then the comma separated values are floats inside there. And again, maybe I have an array of bools. So I could take a variable called bools. I could create an array, and maybe it's true, false, and true again, maybe something like that. And so you can see now I have four different arrays defined. I have an array of strings, I have an array of integers, I have an array of floats, I have an array of booleans. Now PHP is a wonderful language and it allows a lot of different variations. So you could create an array of data that is a mixture. So maybe it's a mixture of different things for a person. So maybe it's Bob, which is my first name, Cravens, and maybe it's my age. Let's rename this to maybe to person. That's more descriptive. So I have this variable person. It's an array, and I have this array of string, and I have an integer. So it's a mixed array. So it's not necessarily just all strings, all integers. It could be a mixture. So those are all examples of different types of arrays. Maybe I want to create a new array. So for this, I'm just going to say this is an empty array. There's really a couple of ways you can do this. You can just do the brackets, which is the simplest. Here's another empty array. You might see this sometimes. In older versions of PHP, you had to use this syntax. But the modern versions, you can just do it this. I think this is a little bit more clear what's on line 11. I usually do not do this one here. I'm just going to comment it out just so that we can see that that's the one that I normally do not do. But that's an empty array. So once you have an empty array, you can add elements to this empty array. And then how you do that is you can create your empty array. You can use the brackets on this side of the equal sign. And then you can push in whatever a value is. And so maybe we're going to push in a color, red. So now this empty array will have as its first element the color red. I can push another value onto here. So maybe it's an array, and I'm going to push in the number 1. And then maybe I can push in another. And I could push in that, say, that 45.3 value. So now I've pushed in 3 different values into that array. So far we've got just defining our arrays up front. We can define mixed arrays. We can create an empty array and then add elements to it. Let's try to echo out our array. Let's just see what we have. So I'm going to echo out that person array. And let's see what it does. Now it's giving me some squiggles here because it's kind of already saying, hey, whoa, something's going on here. And so let's go over here and let's just see what it does. And you can see that it says, hey, I don't have a way to convert this array to a string. And so what we need to do on our side is we need to convert this to a string. All right, so let's talk about a couple of different ways to do this. So one way is I can smash all these things together. So I can take all of the elements and implode them. And that's a command that we're going to use. So this is the imploded string, and I'm just going to put str, and we're going to say implode. And then what implode does is it takes, first of all, the character that you want to use to put in between all the different elements. So if you don't put anything in there, it's going to smash them together with a space. But let's just put a comma, space, and then we're going to give it the thing that you want to implode. So we're going to implode the person. The output of this, if I hover over here, you can see that the output is a string. So I should be able to take that imploded string, and I'm going to have to put a BR here because I want to have that on the end of there so we can add more strings eventually. And so now you can see this person array had Bob, which is the first name, Cravens, which is the last name, and then this 25, which is the age. And you can see that it has comma space separating all of the elements that were in that array. Another way that we can convert an array to a string is we can convert it to JSON. So I can encode this string to JSON, and I'll just leave it like that, and then we'll echo out our JSON string, and let's see what we get. JSON is a JavaScript object notation, and so JSON has its own format, and so it's trying to take this array and it's converting it to JSON format. And so that's what you can see here. So this is really JSON string, and it looks just like our array, but it's using double quotes instead of single quotes, so it has kind of done some formatting for us. But that's two different ways to convert things to strings. So sometimes what we want to do is we want to be able to loop over all the elements in a particular array. And so we're going to introduce a new operand here. So it's going to be foreach, and then I can say person, and we'll put value here. And so normally when I do a foreach, I like to put my brackets on separate lines. It's personal choice. Some people like to have it like this. I personally don't like that. I feel like it's more readable if I keep them on separate lines. So you'll see me do this all the time. But now let's just echo out the value appended with a line break here. And let's see what we get here. So this notation for each person, what it's going to do is it's going to take every single element that's in this person, and the first time through this loop, value will be set to Bob, and then we echo out Bob right there. And then the next time through this loop, it's going to be the next element value, which is Cravens. And so it's going to echo out Cravens, and that's this line right here. And then the final time through the loop, it's going to set value equal to 25, and then it's going to echo out 25. So that's a third way that we can echo out an array, is we can print each element. All right, I want to copy and paste this for each loop because I want to change this up just a little bit, and this is going to help us lead into the next type of array. But here I'm going to change this up as person, and I'm going to say key. I'll use this little arrow syntax. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I'm going to get is, this is a new variable called key, and here's the value. And so when I echo this out, I'm going to add key in here, and we're going to maybe separate that by a semicolon, and we'll have the value. So I'm echoing out the key, semicolon space, value, line break. And so let's go ahead and run this again. So this time I got Bob Cravens 25. Let's see what we get now. Now we can see the first time we went through, we got Bob Cravens 25. And now the second time through, we've got these prefix here that's 0, 1, 2, but we still get the Bob Cravens 25 on the right side of those colons. And so what we're seeing here is this prefix 0, 1, 2 is the index of the element in the array. Bob is the 0 element in the array. Cravens is the first element, and 25 is the second element. Now these elements are indexed by 0-based numbers, and that's sometimes a little challenging to remember, especially when you're used to counting all the time and you say 1, 2, 3. But just think of it like not counting from 1 anymore. You're counting from 0. So every time you see an array, 0, 1, 2, 3. Another way that we can see this is, for example, if I echo out my person array, and I want to echo out the 0 element, and then I can put the line break after it. What I'm expecting here is the 0 element should be Bob. So I should get another Bob down here. So let's go ahead and we'll save and we'll refresh this. And you can see that indeed that is true. So I get Bob. So that leads us to another way that you could create a string from this, is you could say echo, person, and you could put the 0 element, and then you could put a space if you wanted, and the next element, and you can put a space if you want, and then you can do the last element. So yeah, that's another way that you can convert this array to strings by indexing into all the elements individually. You can see that's written right there. And so when you see this notation here, you can think of this like this. So this key is associated with this value. When we echo out that index, that's associated with the value. Let's talk about another kind of array called an associative array. And when we create an associative array, let's go ahead and create a person 2. We can create an array, but then what we're going to do is we're going to define the keys. So instead of using indexes like 0, and then I can associate that with Bob, or 1, and then I can associate that with Craven. So instead of like this kind of an array where I have indexes, it doesn't really make sense sometimes to have 0, 1, 2 as my keys. What I'd rather see is, what does that element mean? So maybe this is first name. And then instead of the 1, this is last name. And so you can see that these associative names, these keys, don't have to be indexes, but they can be the actual property names. Now, usually when I create an associative array like this, it starts to get a little messy. So I like to put this on multiple lines, and I think it's just a little bit more clear. And so I will almost always put my associative arrays, when I build them, I'm creating them like that. And so I want to take this same code. We're going to run that now down here. But instead of using person, which is person 1, let's put person 2 in here. And just to make sure that it prints differently, let's go ahead and let's put John Smith, and let's change the age to 33. Okay, so we have person 2, John Smith, age 33. We're going to loop over all the elements in person 2, and we're going to get their key and the value, and then we're going to echo out the key :space value. So let's go ahead and see what that gives us over here. I'm going to refresh, and now you can see it's almost like here. This is the first time we did the key value loop. This is the second time over a new person, but now the key names have changed. So instead of being the indexes, we actually get the proper key names: last name, first name, age. And let me go ahead and make another person. We're going to call this person 3. And this will be maybe Sue. And run out of names, so I'll just say Sue Black, and maybe she's 44. And let's go ahead and do one more person here. This will be person number 4. So I have a John Smith, a Sue Black, and let's say a Toby Green. And this person is 55. All right, so now I got these 3 persons. I got person 2, person 3, person 4. Guess what? I can now make an array of arrays. So maybe these people are authors. We're going to make an authors array. The inside of there is person 2, person 3, and person 4, just like that. So now you can see I have an array called authors, and you can see I define the array here, but inside there, it's not that I have strings or ints, I have arrays. So this is an array of arrays. This is a multiple dimension array. And the easiest way for me to print this out is we can use our JSON string. We can JSON encode this, and we'll print it out. We'll copy that code and put it down here below. And so I have this JSON string here, and I'm going to take all my authors, and I'm going to JSON encode them, and I'm going to echo out that. And we'll just change this to author string. We'll echo out the author string. Let's see what we get. And so now I have this new bunch right here. So what you can see is there is what's echoed out is an array. So I have an array, and then this opening bracket is associated with this closing bracket over here. And I have first name is John Smith, and then I have Sue Black, and then I have Toby Green. So I get all of that context now echoed out. Now, one other way that I can echo out an array of arrays is I can once again use my foreach. And so I can say for each authors as author. And then what I have right here at this time is I have this array. And so inside of this loop, I could have another loop where I can say for each author as key value, and then I can echo out the key and the value, just what I did before. So this piece right here, we applied this earlier right here to each individual person. And now what I'm doing is I have an outer loop that's echoing over the array of those people. So I have this, every single one of these persons is now in this variable. So from here, the inner loop now loops over that. So let's go ahead and save this. We'll refresh. And then you can see here at the very bottom, I can see all three of those people. So I got John Smith, I got Sue Black, and I got Toby Green. So in this video, it was a bit long, but we introduced two different types of arrays. We just normal arrays where we didn't really define the key or the association. We just define the array elements themselves. And then we talked about associative arrays where we can actually name all these different keys and associate them with the different values. There's a lot more that you can do with arrays in PHP, but this is the basics, and so let's stick with the basics for now.